Hey everybody, George Ross here. I'm at Last Chance Archery. I just got back from probably the coolest tournament in archery. It's called the JVD Open, or also known as the Kings of Archery in Eindhoven, Netherlands. And I'm going to walk through today. I was very successful and I used all of my mental game tricks, and I thought that it would be really cool to walk you through all the mental things as sort of a timeline on how I can keep it together, during the tournament with all the complications and distractions and, little things. I want to walk you through to kind of give you a little insight into what it feels like, and you may recognize some of these things, and maybe you can use some of these tips to raise your score in the tournament as well. But first of all, thank you so much for all the people that came up to me at the Kings of Archery to talk about Thing a Week and tell me about how you like Thing a Week and which one you like. I mean, we've got a small group here, Derek and Jonathan and myself. We all work on this Thing a Week every week, and I really appreciate your feedback, and I'm glad that y'all are enjoying this. And hearing from you makes us a little bit more energized to do a lot more and, expand and do some cooler things. So, the Kings of Archery is cool. I'm just going to do a little product review for this. If you're ever going to host a tournament or people thinking about hosting a tournament, they do a few things that are key for the audience. The first thing about this event and what makes it super cool is that they understand that the audience, the participants, are buying a product and they are creating an experience. They're not hosting a tournament, they're creating an experience. And they have several little things set up throughout the tournament to create little mini experiences for everyone. They had little games, who could tie the D-loop the fastest and who could set up the knocking point. They have the nerves of steel at night where everybody gets together. You're trying to shoot arrows through a hole in a steel plate and everybody cheers while they blow up arrows. And it's super fun. But throughout the round, if you shoot a 300, there's 3 opportunities to shoot a 300 during the course of the event. On day 1, we shoot 60 arrows, so that's 2 opportunities to shoot a 300. And then on the last day, you'll shoot 30 arrows, and that's your final opportunity. So at the end of each 300, they set up a little table, and you go, and you get your little sticker, right, for your target that says it's a JVD Open 300, and you get a little badge for your quiver that says, I shot a 300 at the JVD. So the day 1 is a 600, so they also have a 600 pin. And then if you shoot a 900, they've got a little 900 pin. So that's little mini things that anyone can enjoy the experience, whether if you only shoot 1 300 or if you shoot 3 300s. There's ways that you can enjoy this experience and have some high points, even though you may not have shot a score that you're super happy with, but you had a couple of successful pieces within the day. At the end of 900, they give you like a little 900 club, little patch, and then this year's trophy looks like this. It's like engraved wood, where they have put the JVD Open in 1st, 2nd, and 3rd place on there. The award ceremony, super cool. The fire, sparkler effects, the whole bit. So you get the full meal deal. And I was in the senior division, the old man division, the 50-plus group. And the 50-plus group doesn't usually get the sparkle and panache that the top groups get. But JVD did a really good job of making sure that all the divisions got the special treatment, the fire and, the walkouts and, all that. So they do a fantastic job creating an experience. So if you ever get a chance to go to a cool tournament, this would be a really cool one to go. Okay, that being said, let's talk about the mental game of shooting an event. I want to walk you through because I showed up to this event and I've been really busy, with lessons and Thing a Week and all that I haven't been practicing, terribly hard, but I've been practicing, somewhat regular. And I went into this event without too much expectation, but the nerves and everything is still there. So I'm going to kind of walk you through the timeline here and explain to you how I manage the nerves and performance and how I stayed present through the whole thing. So I'm going to try to walk through this and be a little bit more descriptive. It all starts off a week or so, maybe even 2 weeks before the event, and someone said something like, oh man, our flight is only 8 days away. And I remember pulling out my phone and looking, and I was like, oh my God, it's like here. I need to do some shooting and get ready. And I suddenly had this like little flash of excitement in my chest. And that's where I first start the mental game. And nowadays it's kind of a reflex. But you have to remember to do this initially. But when I get the initial flash of excitement, I start planning. I'm only going to just shoot my bow. I'm just going to shoot the bow. I'm not going to work on it. I'm not going to try to fix anything. I'm just going to sight it in, and I'm going to keep going. I'm just going to shoot. I'm just going to shoot the arrow. Because everyone shows up to an event, and they have this fear, and they have this like almost paralysis about shooting a 300 or shooting a 900. The reason for that is you can't shoot a 300. You can't shoot a 900. And it's impossible. Your brain knows it, and emotionally you react to the impossibility of that because you can't shoot a 300 with one arrow. We have to shoot these arrows individually. We can't be thinking about the arrow that we've already shot. We can't think about the arrows that we're going to shoot. We can't strategize and get out in front. We can't react to competitors or anything. Your job in the tournament is to just shoot an arrow. That's it. Just get that arrow right. The only job. And I try to bring it down to that so that I can manage the emotion and the distance that it takes. You're watching the scorecard in number 1, and number 2, and number 3, and number 4. And soon you start getting down toward the end of the scorecard, right? And the new emotional things come up. So step 1, I'm reminded at how close the tournament is, so I feel a little flash of excitement. Then we arrive. We stayed up all night. We flew across the Atlantic. We get there. We have to rent the car. This year, I had a whole group with me, so we walked all over Amsterdam. I think we did 7 or 8 miles just walking around. Then we got in the car and went to Eindhoven. And the next morning, we got up and went to the local club. I got to the local club. Everyone was there. Lots of top shelf, well-known pros are there. Lots of locals are there shooting, people coming up to talk, and the whole bit, the club is just fantastic. And when I got my bow out, I felt the nervousness and I had to talk myself down, right? And we're just there for just a practice to just make sure our bows aren't broken and everything is working the way that it should and all of that. So I'm shooting along and I'm feeling that quiet whisper of trigger punching, still back there. I cleared my target panic out way back in the 90s, but it's still in there somewhere, that little quiet thing. And I remember turning to Leo and I told him, I said, I'm going to need to, when I get home, I'm going to need to work on that because I can feel the whisper, the urge to want to shoot the release. It's a little too close to the surface for my own liking. And I didn't know, right, how things were going to go, right? I had the opportunity for it to go really well. I had the opportunity for it to just be right? So I just made up my mind that I'm just going to shoot good arrows and whatever happens, happens. And I started working on that at the event. I was shooting 9s like crazy at the club. I'm trying to warm myself up and get going. I'm shooting 9s like crazy. And I felt myself begin to go ahead and console myself early for dropping a bunch of points. It's okay, you're busy and you're shooting, it's okay. So if you drop a few, no big deal, just shoot your bow kind of thing. And I was like, wait a minute, no. I'm gonna shoot the best arrow that I can let go every time I load my bow, and I need to stay on top of that. That's the rational me cutting into that train of thought that's in my head, that one that kind of boils and makes me more nervous and kind of begins to make me lose control. So I said, I'm just going to shoot the arrow. We flash forward. We're standing in the venue. We have to shoot our first score on Friday. We start the practice ends, and my hands are buzzing. And I've shot tournaments for 40 years, but my hands still They buzz a little bit when I'm in the tournament. And I'm going, just shoot a good arrow. I shot a 9 in practice. And the bow just, and I was like, okay. It reminded me that I was being too automatic. I just kind of turned my brain off and let muscle memory take over, and I just started shooting a tournament. But I wasn't present, and I wasn't paying attention. And shooting that 9, I was like, wait a minute. I hardly even remember where the sight pin was when I let that go. So I was like, okay, you need to slow down. You need to get your attention. So I'm going to walk you through how I do that. See, everybody says, oh, you must focus on one arrow and you must pay attention to the process and don't be outcome oriented and all that, but nobody tells you how to do it, right? So this is how I do it. The first thing is I pick my bow up and I say to myself, okay, let's get this right. And I walk up and I set my bow and I'm kind of watching the clock and I'm paying attention to the floor. I pull an arrow out and I put it in the bow. Now here's something that I do to create presence, is I move a little slower and a little bit more deliberate, like I am performing every piece of shooting a bow, so that way I am mentally present and I'm not doing this automatically and I'm not waiting on archery to happen to me. I am actually directing what happens. So I load the bow, and I go about this speed and I snap it on. I pull my D-loop out so that it's accessible and I'm ready. I get my release and I put it on. And then I do that breath, that psychological sigh, because it pushes the jitter down. It lowers the heart rate for about 20 seconds. And I start raising the bow. Everybody do this right now. You there, you do this. Do this. You feel the little sinking feeling that you feel when you breathe out? I use that as the signal to start moving. That's my everything is okay and it's just the way that it should be. Occasionally I'll take the breath, but I'm so wound up I don't feel the sinking feeling. So I'll pause. I'll drop my hand by my side here, and I'll do it again. And when I feel that, then I know it's working. And then I carry on with the shot, pick it up and pull it back, and I shoot. When I'm nervous, I perform the follow through. Everything I'm doing, first when I'm here, I make the commitment, I'm going to do this skill all the way through to the end, top speed, without being careful. I'm just going to shoot it, right? The pin, because I'm nervous, I'm a little bit elevated. You know, they said, this is your first scoring end. You know, everybody gets a little adrenaline at that point. So I'm like, okay, I need to just stay the same. I need to just shoot this arrow. So I breathe, I pick up, I pull back, and the dot looks a little faster than what it normally looks, but I know it's because my brain is fast, right? So I just shoot the shot. I look at the middle. I'm running my inner monologue in my head. I talk to the dot right there, just like that, right there in the middle. That has something positive in my head that is moving the shot forward. I'm in a progress mode while I'm shooting, right? I'm not trying to calm down. I'm trying to shoot arrows anyway, and that's key, because when you get nervous, it is a physical change or a chemical change in your body that has to dissipate over time. So you can't really calm down, because focusing on the nerves, you get more of it, right? You get more of whatever you focus on when you're in competition. So I focus on shooting good, clean shots anyway, right? I try to just shoot through it, and eventually the ebb and flow of how the nerves go during the game usually writes itself as you go, and then you get everything working. So let me show you a few things. So I was going, right? And then right here is the big miss that I had, right? And that was like, whoa, that one's way out there. Take a look at this target here. So you see this target here. Can you see that okay, Derek, from where you're at? Okay. This target here is pretty solid, right? This target is a little bit loose. And then this target, I was struggling a little bit, right? So that's one of the first demons that I deal with when I'm shooting, is I tend to move a little too quickly because I'm nervous, and then I start becoming automatic, and then I start doing it without thinking. So to cure this third target problem, what I would do is I would go arrow number 1, load the bow slowly, look, breathe, release on, set, breathe, pick it up, pull back on, arrow number 2. Then I put the bow, I load an arrow in the bow, my release is in its little clip, and then I just hang my hand down, I might shake it out, and I'm watching the clock. Typically after the second arrow, I've got about 70 seconds left on the clock, so I just stand there and kind of relax and breathe regularly and with some fullness while I watch the clock get to 60. And when the clock gets to 60 seconds left, then I'll get myself set and get on target and pick up and pull back. So the result of that slowing down and reconnecting with presence on the third arrow, I ended up with all of my targets in the second 300 that we shot. The groups are somewhat similar, right? You'll notice that this target is more to the right, right? There's a shot to the right. This one, the first few ends, was to the right here. And my 0 was creeping a little bit to the right as I was going along, rather than taking apart my form in my head and figuring out what I was doing that was causing my bow to cant, which was making it hit a little bit to the right. I just moved my sight. I went 3, and I shot another end, and then looked, it's still a little bit right, so I put 3 more. And I shot another end, still a little bit right. I went a couple more, and then I got it back centered, and I kept going, right? On the second day, everything was left, so I put those 8 clicks back, and then ultimately, about halfway through the second day, I ended up walking it back in. So I'm constantly watching where my arrows hit, and I am editing my sight setting to keep the scatter centered in the middle of the bullseye, okay? So I started the game, day 1, first 300 set. I just happened to look over. I'm running the handheld, and I'm not even paying attention. The guy says 10, 10, 10. I go 10, 10, 10, and I write it in. He says, XX10, XX10. I just repeat the score and I put it in. But I wasn't really paying attention. And I just happened to look at the guy next to me as he was writing the scores down, and I realized there was only 2 ends left, and I was still clean. Something inside of my brain, right? One of the demons that shows up goes, oh my God, you're about to shoot a 300 at Kings, right? And you wouldn't think, in practice, if you shoot a lot of 300s, you wouldn't think it's a big deal, but it becomes somewhat of a big deal, right? It isn't different, but we make it different. But I said to myself, not today, not today. We're going to stay the same, and we're just going to shoot the arrow, right? Then I walk back to the line, and what I call a complication shows up, something that makes it a little bit harder. A reporter walks up to me, and they go, hi, GRIV, I see you're over here shooting, and can I ask you a couple of questions? I've got 2 ends left for the first 300 of the day at Kings, and I'm like, oh, sure, yeah, we can do some questions. And I answer a bunch of questions. She makes me think about how I shoot my bow, all the things that I shouldn't be doing. But I answered all of her questions, had a great time, it was a good interview. And then I walked back over, and I had to very intentionally say, okay, let's get back to where we were. We're just going to shoot the arrow. And I run a little movie in my head that's more of the feel of a good shot rather than the visual of a good shot. And I get reconnected with what I'm going to do. Then I load my bow slowly and very deliberately, put my release, and I do my things. And I can get consistency in those little procedures that I do to keep everything normal and on time. Even though emotionally I may have some rise and fall, but I can keep everything normal with a slow, somewhat slow, methodical procedure. right? I don't allow myself to get too fast. So I made it through the 9th end. I speak with her again, and then there was a thing-a-week fan hanging over the rail. We shook hands and all. He's talking to me, and he's like, "Good luck, you're so close," right? And my brain goes, "Oh my God, you are close. We only have one left." I'm We're just going to shoot the arrow, right? We're just going to shoot, because you can't be too up and you can't be too down either. You got to stay steady, still and still, right? So I constantly have to redirect myself, right? I get into the second 300 and the next demon shows up. The sight pin looks a little unsteady, and it goes, "You usually get tired right about now. You should be more careful." And I go, careful misses. I'm going to go 100% top speed all the way through to the end. We're not doing this today. I'm just going to shoot this bow. That's it, right? I was constantly having to redirect myself to stay on task, because the voice comes in and says, "You're not going to be able to do this." Or the voice comes in saying, "Oh my God, this might actually turn out really good." You begin imagining worst case scenarios. That's the third demon. I'm at full draw, and my brain is imagining what's going to happen when I miss this shot and I let down, and I'm like, "What was that?" Okay, we're definitely not doing that. Okay. This time I took the arrow completely out of the bow and put it away and restarted everything, because that was a little crazy. But we've all done that. We've all been at full draw, either planning our celebration after the arrow hits, or we're planning our excuse for why it missed. I know you're out there. Y'all all know what I'm talking about, right? So by being rather swept up into the competition, I did a really good job this time of being an observer. So I could observe the thoughts coming through my head, and I could work with those to make sure that I stayed on task and I was still doing my job. I can observe the rise and fall of emotion, right? That tingle of excitement that hits, mid-game. And here's how I manage those. I'm going to take my quiver belt off so you can see. But I start feeling the excitement like up here in my chest, right? So my feet were sore from all the walking that we did and the whole bit, so I needed to sit down a good bit. Normally I don't sit down, but this time I did, and it worked so well, I think I'm going to do it more. But I sit down in the chair, and I kind of slide down in the chair, and I put my hands up on my head like this. And when I put my hands on my head, it allows me to relax my shoulders in kind of a demonstrative way. And then while I'm sitting here, to hold off that little flood of emotion that I was getting, is I'm breathing. I'll breathe in for 4. I'll hold it for 4. And then I breathe out for 7. And they call that box breathing. I breathe in for 4. I hold for 4. Let out for 7. Count to 4. Breathe in for 4, right? Controlling the breathing, staying focused on the breath, trying to not allow the little train of thought, the planner in my head that's trying to get out in front and trying to tell me to be careful and trying to protect me from all the things that could possibly happen and all that. I try to keep that as quiet as possible so that I can just focus. A lot of times I would be sitting in my chair like this, and I'm just looking at the arrow holes in my target, and I'm imagining just the sight pin quietly moving around in the middle and the release breaking so that I could stay on task. I could focus on the things that I needed to focus on to get the most accuracy that I could possibly get. I had several really, really close ones. And, I had some very bare minimum line touchers, right? So I didn't get away, super clean. I didn't shoot a brilliant X count. It was just adequate, for 900. But most of the time, people in an event or a tournament, and the reason I'm going through this and kind of trying to make a little timeline, that mental game is not calming down or not feeling any emotion. Mental game is making a plan for your performance and then using several tools to make sure that you see that plan all the way through, even though conditions are constantly shifting, right? In the first day, I had the interviewer that took me out of what I was doing so that I could do the interview thing, and then I had to get back into the thing. I shot the 300, right? We went over and I got my little pen and got my stickers. Like, yeah, that was awesome. Yeah, so pretty happy about that. And I put it away. And then I look up and they put a camera in the middle of the floor pointing at me. And then they put a camera down on the target looking at my target. And for me, I train with a camera on the target because that helps me train with nerves and peer pressure. So that's like my kryptonite, right? When the camera's on me and you can see every little mistake that I make, and then you can see the result of the mistake that I made down at the target, that's a whole lot to think about. And I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? We're just going to shoot. The cameras are not doing anything but just sitting there. We're just going to shoot. And you're going to make sure that no matter what, even if you make a mistake or whatever, you're going to make sure that you shoot that shot to the 100% top speed all the way through to the end, so that at least I know, right, that I did everything that I could to get as good a score as I possibly could. And I'm going through all of this with you not to talk about shooting a 900, but to give you an idea about how the rise and fall of emotion walks through the event. You have to watch your zero because your body changes, so you have to change your sight to catch up with it. You have to redirect your thinking when your brain starts imagining destruction or success. You got to redirect so that you're present and actually shooting the arrow that you have in your bow, because it's a guaranteed mistake if you get out ahead of yourself, right? So keeping all of that together will give you your best chance at shooting your best capable score. So I hope this helps some of you to give some idea. Put your questions down in the comments and I'll keep an eye on this so that I can continue to answer your questions and things. But that's just kind of a look into the inside of my head while I'm walking through a tournament, keeping everything together. Sometimes I'm successful at it, sometimes I'm not. Sometimes I'm just lucky, sometimes not at all. But staying present and observing what's happening so that you can work with it rather than just allow it to happen and you be taken downstream with it is your best chance at success in a big archery event. So that's it for today's Thing a Week, and I'll see you guys next week.